I remember one time specifically when I was in Houston. I was at a client dinner and I ordered decaf. And I remember someone making a comment like, why would you even drink decaf? It has no benefit whatsoever. We only want the caffeine. Something to that effect. And at the time, it didn't really dawn on me. This was 10 plus years ago when I was kind of in my corporate healthcare world. And now I look at the research and I'm like, I'm absolutely clear as day, decaf has benefits. So let's break down 5 of the key benefits of decaf coffee, because the caffeine is actually only one relatively small benefit in the grand scheme of things. So let's go ahead and dive in. After today's video, I want you to check out a company called Hiya. They are a keto multivitamin, and it is a cool chewable form, but it doesn't have a bunch of sugar added to it. So if you have kids, you get it. And if you're watching this video because you like coffee, you probably need coffee because you have kids, so it all makes sense, right? So it is really neat because it's got 12 different fruits and vegetables in one single serving. So it's really made with some really good stuff in mind, but it's also pediatrician formed. So it's a really cool product, and that link down below is going to save you 50% off, half price off your entire first order. So you get that first order of Hiya Kids Multivitamin and you can save 50%. So you use code Thomas and use that link that's down below. So again, code Thomas and the link that's in the description. My kiddos love it. My son loves it. You get to decorate the bottle and everything. It's just kind of cool, and it makes it a fun sort of habit to form for the kiddos. So use that link down below. Okay, this first benefit, blood sugar and insulin management. Now this one's interesting because normally coffee comes under fire because the caffeine in coffee can trigger a glucose spike. And it does that because of a couple things. For one, the caffeine is going to trigger sort of the fight or flight response that allows the glucose to elevate. But in addition to that, sometimes it can allow stored glycogen to release into the bloodstream, causing a spike. The interesting thing is decaf does not trigger this effect. There's a study that was published in the British Journal of Nutrition. Now it was a rodent model study, but very fascinating. They took a look at rodents and specifically gave them coffee polyphenols, a pretty concentrated amount, so 200 milligrams per kilogram of body weight of coffee polyphenols. Now, alongside this, they gave them sugar and starch right afterwards. They found that when given coffee polyphenols, their postprandial glucose was significantly lower, but also their postprandial insulin was significantly lower, indicating that insulin was able to be released in the particular fashion that it should be to get glucose down, and then the insulin levels came back down. It wasn't pumping out tons of insulin to try to modulate the glucose. Huge cool news. Then they also found that there was a decrease in what is called an insulinotropic polypeptide. This is sort of a precursor to what signals insulin to release. So overall, it regulated all kinds of things. It didn't just happen at sort of an enzymatic digestion level. It happened at a true cellular level. Now, what exactly is going on here? Well, we know from other research that the polyphenols in coffee can suppress lipogenic enzymes. Okay, they suppress enzymes that are associated with fat storage through the downregulation of something called SREB1. Now, that's great for not wanting to store fat. Okay, it ultimately tells us that, yeah, decaf coffee may actually inhibit some fat accumulation, which is great. But it also inhibits malonyl coenzyme A, which has to do with fatty acid synthesis as well. So what does this all mean? What does this have to do with glucose and insulin? Well, SREB1 is triggered by either fat or glucose. So by attenuating the SREB1, we actually work on these pathways that work not only with fatty acid synthesis and overall lipogenesis, but also with glucose metabolism as well. Now, some of this is speculation because this is a rodent model, but still very interesting to look at the mechanism. Now let's move into the next one, the antioxidant effects, which are really fascinating. The amount of antioxidants that are in coffee are astounding. They really are. In fact, most Americans are getting more antioxidants from their morning cup of coffee than they are throughout the rest of the day. So there's a study that was published in the Journal of Nutritional Sciences that took a look at 109 subjects and took a look at their food, had them log their food and everything. Okay, they found that 79% of their total antioxidants when it came down to the intake for the day came from beverages. Only 21% came from food. Okay, so most of us are getting our antioxidants from beverages to begin with, but the lion's share of those antioxidants came from coffee. 47% of the antioxidant load for the day came from their single serving of coffee. Okay, so what that tells us, the polyphenols have huge antioxidant effects. So that's regardless whether there's caffeine or not. So let's just put that one aside. Let's move into the next one, which still has to do with antioxidants, but separate and apart. The brain protective effects. This is fascinating stuff. Now, the neuroprotection side of things comes down mainly to what is called chlorogenic acid. Okay, chlorogenic acid in vitro studies has really shown some interesting stuff, but let's dive into the research specifically. So there's a study that was published in the journal Neurochemistry, took a look at regular coffee, decaf coffee, and straight chlorogenic acid. Okay, now they did this in vitro, so directly working with neuronal cells. Okay, so they were working with brain neurons, and they wanted to see how it would protect them from oxidative cellular death. Okay, so basically trying to kill a neuron with oxidative stress. How would these polyphenols or chlorogenic acid protect it? Well, they found that all three, decaf, regular, and chlorogenic acid directly inhibited the neuronal cell death. Basically, they protected the neuron. But how did this happen specifically, if we want to get nerdy with it? Well, what they found is that the chlorogenic acid actually inhibited the anti-apoptotic proteins. What does that mean? Okay, apoptosis is the pre-programmed cellular death. Okay, a cell is programmed to die at a certain point. It's also programmed to die if it comes under too much stress, because rather than have a cell that is super stressed out causing damage, it's better for that cell just to die and go away. So in this particular case, by inhibiting the anti-apoptotic proteins, it was allowing for the natural cell death to occur, not a premature cell death. But then additionally, they found that the chlorogenic acid blocks the cleavage of capsase 3. This allowed for proper apoptosis to occur when necessary. So the long and the short of this is that chlorogenic acid allowed the cells to die when they're supposed to die and stay alive when they're supposed to stay alive. Basically restore their normal function regardless of what's happening with any stressors that are coming in inflicted in this study. Now let's move into the longevity piece, because this is some intriguing stuff. And again, we're looking at rodent models. We can't say with certainty that, hey, drinking a decaf coffee is going to make you live longer, but it's very interesting stuff. There is a study published in the Impact Journal of Aging that took a look at aging mice, and they gave them either decaf coffee or regular coffee. Well, they found that both kinds of coffee, decaf or regular, decreased the amount of circulating fatty acids and ended up increasing liver ATP. This is positively associated when it comes down to longevity because it means that the body is utilizing fats more. If they're in the bloodstream, the body's probably not using them as much. If they're out of the bloodstream, it means that they're probably being oxidized. And we can further validate this because there was an increase in PPAR alpha. Okay, now PPAR alpha tells us that these cells are receiving the nuclear receptor protein, PPAR alpha, to use fats better. So we know, okay, less fats in the bloodstream plus more PPAR means the cells are oxidizing the fat. This can be good for longevity for a number of different reasons. A, it can keep us leaner, which is good for longevity. B, it may have muscle protecting effects. And then C, we're overall putting ourselves in a spot where maybe we're going to be less insulin resistant because we can utilize fats better. Now they also found that liver mTOR was decreased. Liver mTOR is directly associated with insulin resistance. So when mTOR in the liver is attenuated or decreased, there's usually a downstream effect of better insulin sensitivity. All these have to do with longevity in longer term wraparound ways with overall metabolism. But now we move into this last one that's a very important piece when it comes down to just overall health, and that's inflammation. Now, strangely enough, drinking coffee with caffeine can backfire as far as inflammation is concerned. That caffeine can make people that are more prone to anxiety, more jittery, more anxious, more nervous, which has a direct correlation with inflammation, not to mention the potential diuretic effect, if you're not adequately hydrating alongside it, can lead to inflammation. All these things not good. So decaf actually plays a positive role with inflammation. Check this out. The American Journal of Clinical Nutrition published a paper looking at 730 healthy women and 662 type 2 diabetic women. With this, they studied their diets for 4 years. And they found that those that consumed decaf coffee, the more decaf coffee was associated with a 2.5% decrease or lesser amount of what is called E-selectin. E-selectin is a part of our immune system that recruits leukocytes to basically trigger an attack. Think of your immune system like the army. Think of E-selectin like an army recruiter. If there's less army recruiters, they're getting less people into the army, which means less of a war. Now, This doesn't necessarily apply during an acute infection or something, but it does apply for low-grade chronic inflammation. Now, the reason that we potentially know this is because when they look at the data more, they see there's also a 7.9% decrease in C-reactive protein levels. Now, C-reactive protein is like a master amount that you can look at for inflammation. So a 2.5% decrease in E-selectin leading to a 7.9% decrease in C-reactive protein. What you can hypothesize here is that that's less recruitment of inflammation leading to a lower amount of inflammation overall. So drink your coffee in the morning. There's nothing wrong with having caffeine. But as the day goes on, you're still getting huge benefits if you shift to decaf. Okay, the polyphenols, even the taste itself and being able to satiate you is worth something. There is a reason that I am a fan of decaf, and a lot of times I won't even have regular coffee. I'll give myself decaf in the morning and I hardly notice a difference even with my energy. It's pretty wild how that works. It's probably psychosomatic, but still wild. I'll see you at Sizzler.